explosivity, but at the same time, drinkability. To me, this is really what Tenuta di Trinoro must be. It's a wine you want to drink, a wine that makes you want to stand up, doesn't want to sit down. My father would always say, is this wine seated down?
That's good.
What do you think of the word Super Tuscan? Do you think it totally relates to us or not? I'm just curious of your opinion in this case.
To be honest, I never second question this kind of term, but my definition would be, or my description would be... This episode has just become even closer to my heart after visiting the Trinoro estate a couple of days ago in Tuscany. After standing in the Tenuta vineyard on a sunny September morning, I could truly understand why Andrea Franchetti wanted to work on this land just after he first laid his eyes on the valley. The beauty and calming resonance of this place is almost out of this world. Its remoteness, how the light bands on the steep stony terraces, and how the Monte Miata watches over the vineyard straight ahead. I hope I will never forget this feeling. Then we tasted those three 2022 Cabernet Franc Crus side by side, one of them of course from the Tenuta vineyard. All of them are truly different in character, like three sons of a noble house. Magna Costa might have been the most generous at the moment. Then the 2022 Palazzi and 4 vintages of Tenuta di Trinoro. The 98 was the most Cabernet Franc dominant and one of the best wines I drank in my whole life. Gracefully aged like a top left bank chateau. All Trinoros carry an immense concentration alongside an awakening freshness, impeccably fine-grained tannin, indescribable complexity and minutes-long finish. My god, you have to try them. But now, listen to what Benjamin has to tell about Trinoro. So Tuscany is a completely different terroir, obviously, and completely different grapes. We talked a little bit about the first step that your father took in the southern part of Tuscany. This is basically one of the last bit of land in Tuscany, right? It's going into Lazio and Umbria. How would you define the place there in terms of growing conditions, microclimate?
Yeah, essentially, exactly right. We are at the last... Really, if you look at the map, where Tuscany meets Umbria and meets Lazio, they all meet at one point just before there is this little town called Sarteano, which is where essentially where the end of the main road ends, and you have this gravel road which starts, and as it goes, it then divides. On the one hand, it starts to go into this hill, which is called Castiglioncello del Trinoro, and then the gravel road continues down, and all of a sudden, very unexpectedly, you start to see vineyards. And the great thing is that the only vineyards there are ours, so we are completely alone in this side of the valley growing wine. Microclimate. So as you keep on going, you see just in front of you this again a volcano, but in this case it's a dormant volcano called Monte Miata, which is the tallest mountain in Tuscany. And the Monte Miata is in front of us. To the left, we have this other mountain called Monte Cetone, and just at the bottom is our vineyards. What this means, actually, for whomever is interested, you can find the photos online easily, is that you get very cold air coming down from the mountains at night. So much that over the years, we've had more and more frost issues in late April, beginning of May. And last year, we decided to invest in fans to move the air, because for too many years we were using candles, and this started to happen more and more often. And in fact, it's like, I'm so glad we did this investment this year, because this year round we had 5 nights in a row where we went below zero. And this would have completely destroyed our harvest. and we wouldn't have had enough candles. You usually have enough candles for 1 or 2, maybe 3 nights, but never for 5. So this is to give you an understanding. You have this very cold air coming at night. Again, it can be very hot during the day, and it's getting hotter. When during our blend this year, we had all our samples of wine in front of us, and we were looking behind the samples. We had the temperature of big maps of temperature from July to October for 21, 22, and 23 to really see how much the temperatures have been changing every year. And you just see it. It's just September, October is just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And this is, it's when 80% of the work is done. But having said this, we are still in a relatively fresh place for Tuscany. If you compare it to Bolgheri or even to Montalcino, we are in an area where it doesn't get as warm, and so for this reason we think we're still making wines which are especially Merlot, which is a wine that is really struggling in Tuscany over the past few years. We are still managing to make a very drinkable Merlot. But I want to add one last thing to this point, is that how much things have changed in where we are in the last 35 years since we've been making wine there, is that imagine my father, when he first planted wine, he did super high density. It's like, it's Burgundy style plantation with Bordeaux style varieties, like 12,000 plants per hectare. And the idea was really to create, structure, not to create concentration. But the reason he thought he needed to do that was because he thought it was too cold. And now, as the years go by, he was always planting with the vines looking at the sun. So it was always trying to maximize the heat extraction. And now looking back, we have sort of the opposite problem. So definitely microclimately, I would say, can get very hot during the day, can get quite cold at night. Rainfall, typically not a lot. It's quite dry, but we are lucky because there's a lot of water available in the area. So if we're really desperate, we always have access to water.
Especially at that estate, one can see how much your father admired Bordeaux varieties, and this is basically a little Bordeaux in Tuscany, right? You have 4 varieties. These are 4, or actually 5 with Semillon.
Yes, right? Semillon as well.
Yes, but this is also Bordeaux variety, so
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I also read somewhere that your soil is also kind of similar to Saint-Emilion, or some of them. This kind of clay limestone with a little bit of gravel.
Exactly.
Do you think that obviously in Bordeaux it's very ideal for these varieties, but do you think that with these kind of climatic combinations, do you think this soil type and these varieties still function well, and this is a good combination?
Look, I think the answer is yes. I am very impressed by the quality of, for example, the Cabernet Franc year and year. It's just, to me, it seems, my father really believed in Cabernet Franc early on. This was not obvious in the 1980s. And again, going back to that idea of being, in this case, somewhat anticipating the future, anticipating the trends. He was immediately, he said, this place is right for Cabernet Franc. And this is shown from the fact that 50% of what he planted is Cabernet Franc. So he immediately thought Cabernet Franc was great for the place. And if you ever get the opportunity to taste the 3 different crus we make, which are called Campi di Magnacosta, Campi di Tenaglia, Campi di Camaggi, I just find the variation and the taste of the Cabernet Franc so immediate and so impactful. And to me, this means that it's the right place, because if it's good, and also you can really feel so strongly the soil, it means it's the right place. Similarly, Merlot, I think the Merlot we managed to make in Val d'Orcia is a Merlot which has this drinkability aspect. Merlot, in my opinion, is a great grape because it's so explosive, so immediate. Maybe Cabernet Franc is a bit more intellectual and it's a little bit more time to really flourish. But Merlot in Val d'Orcia, where we are, it's just has this complexity and explosivity, but also this drinkability and sapidity, which I think it's really good. Sauvignon and Petit Verdot, in my opinion, not so much. They're finding more and more Petit Verdot is struggling to reach phenolic maturity. It's more often in the Tenuta di Trinoro blend. We are not including Petit Verdot anymore. We're not including Sauvignon anymore. And in my opinion, this is also due to the fact that that they're not as right for the territory as Merlot and Cabernet Franc.
Mm-hmm. I'm asking this question because obviously you just officially, like a few years ago, you officially sit in the chair of your father, basically. Do you wish to change maybe some of the things what he did in terms of varieties? And I don't know if you have this love for Bordeaux, what he had, but this is basically, there was his vision which kind of fell into your lap. And my impression was that also just because of the logo, which is above your head, this Agricola Moderna, which is not completely different direction, but this is a different direction, kind of high-tech involved vertical planting company, if I'm kind of correct. So this is still related to agriculture, obviously, but I get the impression that you have a quite strong vision of what you want to do. So just a bit go under your skin. What's your vision of this place? Or do you think that it's right and you want to improve on these footsteps but stay in the same shoes, if you know what I mean?
Oh, it's a good question. So these are projects, in my opinion, that are, in my opinion, what has been done. It's the start of, hopefully, my vision, my desire for a place, especially for a place like Trinoro, which is so unique. It's really what, for me, it's about that place is that it's like this gem in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. And I wanted to be the start of something which becomes more than iconic, just becomes, a part of the heritage of the winemaking of Italy, and I see myself really as the second generation of something which I want to continue in the generations to come. In my ideal case scenario that remains in my family, then of course that is hard to know for sure. But this is a bit to answer your question. Like I am, in a way, I'm just carrying on the torch to the next step. I don't want to. I think there was a very clear start, And in my case, I want to continue this project. This doesn't mean that I might not want to do my own projects, and maybe yes, I have been thinking about it, and I have some ideas. But this one specifically, I think, necessitates a very clear set of values, which I think we as a team have very clear, a very specific way of making wine, which to me is a sartorial kind of winemaking. Like, I mean, the fact that we divide the 25 hectares where we grow wine into 50 micro parcels. Each parcel is vinified independently. 6 months after the alcoholic fermentation, does 6 months of French barrique. Remember, 6 months, because I think people in their head think a lot more, but it's not that much. And then after the first full moon of February, always after the first full moon of February, we start to do the blend. And then when we do the blend, of course, the taste changes. Like now I am making the blend. Before it was my father doing the blend. And inevitably we do have slightly different tastes. But I think we have a very clear idea of what kind of Tenuta di Trinoro we want year on year. And I was very, we just released 2021. And which was the first Tenuta di Trinoro, which comes from a blend which me, together with my team, Lorenzo, the winemaker, did. To me, was really a Tenuta di Trinoro. I don't know if you had the opportunity to drink it recently, but it had that same level of character, that same level of explosivity, but at the same time, drinkability. To me, this is really what Tenuta di Trinoro must be. It's a wine you want to drink, a wine that makes you want to stand up, doesn't want to sit down. My father would always say, like, is this wine seated down?
That's good.
And again, going back to the same ideas, we all know where the trends are going. The trends are going towards low alcohol, towards more, making them very drinkable. Typically, the easiest way to achieve that is harvest early, something my father would always say when he tried the grapes, he would say, do you find the blue? He would call it the blue, which is when in his head, the grape has reached the perfect level of phenolic maturity. And in Trinoro, this is something we really, really do always. The wine is made in the vineyards, first and foremost. Yeah. And then it's done in the winery. Having said this, of course, I am looking to improve things in the winemaking process, especially maybe with the wine like Le Cupole. There, in the last few years, I am striving to make a wine which is more drinkable. But the way I'm doing it is not by having wines that I harvest earlier, but by, for example, maybe leaving a few more grapes on the parcels which over the years I am sure will not make it into Tenuta di Trinoro. Or, for example, we don't do anymore. We don't do any more pressing. We just let the wine extract by itself. We're trying to shade more the grapes from the sun for obvious reasons, but also to maintain more freshness. And so in the Cupole, there is a work over the years to make a wine which to me have to have that perfect tension between structure and the drinkability. It's a wine you need to want to drink when you open it. For me, the Cupole. You can even forget about it for 30 years and it's still going to be great, but it's a wine that you also need to want to drink today.
What is the difference in terms of varieties in the current blend between the Trinoro and the Le Cupole?
So it changes. So Tenuta di Trinoro, I can give you the blend of... So Tenuta di Trinoro, as I said, is a wine which is like a dress made around that year. Every year it can change hugely. It's as you say in Italian, it's un vino di annata. It's a wine that reflects that year, and it's almost psychological. No, it's how was 23, how was 22, how was 21. So 21 is 60% Merlot and 40% Cabernet Franc. 2020 is 93% Cabernet Franc, 7% Merlot.
Wow.
So this is to show how much it can change. Now, 22 and 23 is even more different, and I'm not going to tell you the blends yet. 22 comes out next year. Well, typically, the Cupole, the blend remains always sort of the same. It's always about 10% of Petit Verdot and the Cabernet Sauvignon, and the remainder is Cabernet Franc and Merlot. The blends tends to stay the same.
But that's a massive change, right? Like in terms of
Tenuta di Trinoro, the blend.
Yeah, and also in the sea, I mean, compared to other Super Tuscans, so to say, I mean, the sea of Super Tuscans is obviously great, but I mean, this kind of change is almost unique among them, if I'm correct, no?
Yeah, so what do you think of the word Super Tuscan? Do you think it totally relates to us or not? I'm just curious of your opinion in this case.
To be honest, I never second question this kind of term, but my definition would be, or my description would be, to use French varieties, barrique, and the kind of bold red wines, which is ageable. That would be maybe my personal description and experience.
No, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about it personally. I mean, I personally don't like the word. I don't like the term. I think it's somewhat just a bag where wines which don't fit anything else and is thrown in. Again, this is especially true for a wine like Tenuta di Trinoro, which is so unique because we are in a completely unique location. There's some Super Tuscans which have Sangiovese. Some people say Super Tuscan means that it has to do more than 1 year in French barrique. I've heard everything. In my opinion, it's one of those terms that just started and sort of stuck around, and so we are often put into that world. But I am often a bit. I tend to like to think that we're just Tenuta di Trinoro and that's it. But having said this, yes, absolutely. Our Bordeaux, our blend of Tenuta di Trinoro has this very strong character related to the year. When we're doing the blend of Tenuta di Trinoro, we never think about what we want beforehand. Like as we're tasting all the 50 different parcels, as you're tasting them, it becomes very clear, not very quickly, but it becomes quite clear what is outstanding. Like you're like, wow, you drink something and you're just like, okay, this is great. And so out of the 50 different parcels, you might be left with 5, which are just extraordinary that year. And those 5 parcels then will be maybe a couple from, let's say 5 is a bit too little, but let's say 8. And maybe half will be Merlot and half will be Cabernet Franc. Maybe there'll be one of Petit Verdot, one of Sauvignon, but less and less over the years, I must say. 2015 was the last year where we had Petit Verdot or Sauvignon in our blend from 15 to 21. Then after what happens, we don't know. But so as we're tasting this single parcels, you're just like, okay. And then we start to do the blends. So we first start to do a blend of Cabernet Franc, and then we start to do a blend of Merlot. And then you're like, okay, this is the right blends. Maybe we have 2 or 3 ideal blends of each. And then we start to mix them together. So we decide only when we find the perfect blend. And we never ever think about the previous years. We never think about what is the ideal blend of Tenuta di Trinoro. We don't, in our opinion, there's not an ideal blend of Tenuta di Trinoro. There's the ideal blend of that year. However, it still needs to be a Tenuta di Trinoro. When you drink it, you need to say, okay, this is Tenuta di Trinoro. And I like to think that the people who love our wines recognize that very quickly. And I think it was something which makes it, Tenuta di Trinoro is a wine which is in a way infinite. It's endless, perpetual. Yeah, my father used to call it the perpetual wine because it's everlasting. I mean, I have never opened. Every year it's still good. But another thing my father used to always say, it has 3 lives. No, it's you taste it when it's bottled, and then you taste it after 10 years, and then you taste it again after 20 plus years. And it does change. The wines that when they were released, we were like, oh, is this, a perfect example is 2013, which now I'm loving because it's so edgy, so vertical. When it came out, it was almost too much. It was sort of unpleasant for us. And so we actually were releasing really little at the beginning. This is something, the ageability aspect and how the age changes over the years for me. It's really, really so characteristic of the Tenuta di Trinoro.
It's a completely different approach from Sicily to me, because it's more like a Bordeaux approach, right? That the house plant, so to say, can change also from vintage to vintage, right? I think Cabernet Franc and Merlot dominate your plantings, right?
And 90+%.
Cabernet Franc has also, I think, a kind of revival now, or it's not trendy, I don't like this word, but more and more people talk about Cabernet Franc, and I think more and more people appreciate this variety. Do you like this variety, or do you like to work with it?
I've always really, really loved Cabernet Franc. In a way, I think it's my favorite variety. I find it so unique, so interesting, so the variation. I mean, just looking at when you drink Loire compared to when you drink Bordeaux, compared to when you drink Tuscany, it's just whole different worlds, completely different worlds, yet so recognizable. I will always recognize a Loire Cabernet Franc. It's a grape which is adapting very well to the changing climate. Later, longer maturity, later harvest. This allows it to essentially have this longer time of to play with. It's more dangerous, of course, because you have the rainy season arriving, and it's quite a delicate plant. Cabernet Franc is much more delicate than Merlot. So it needs a lot more, attention, tenderness, love. But it's also one that takes longer to come to maturity. So you have that extra 2 weeks of playing with, and then, the taste is just incredible. So you have everything from peppers to vegetables to I even like its acidity in a way, and and then of course aging, what ages better than Cabernet Franc? As I said, Merlot ages amazingly, but it's more immediate. It's more, in Italian we'd say paracula. It's like more shows off more. Cabernet Franc is one of those varieties that just, you need patience. Like when I drink Tenuta di Trinoro 2020 that has 93% Cabernet Franc. And the first time people drank it, they were a bit like, yeah, but is it, it doesn't have that explosivity aspect. I'm like, yes, but give it time. I will guarantee you in 10 years' time, everyone will be raving about 2020 Tenuta di Trinoro.
Good to know. It's time to stock up.
Yeah.
And obviously you have a great understanding of nature and about plants and of your terroir, of course. Why don't I see biodynamic accreditation on your label?
Look, this is, this goes back to your first question. You said what made characterized my father. My father hated labels. Hated labels. So, I mean, Trinoro is EGT, so almost the lowest you can be in Tuscany. Pino da Tavola is lower, but it's, no accreditation. The same in Sicily. Like we don't. None of the contradas are Etna doc, even though some could be, but we don't care. In general, we've always wanted to play our own rules, and I think the great thing of Tenuta di Trinoro is really is that we are alone, so we play by our own rules. And playing by our own rules means that we do, in a way, what we want. My father and I, we've always really believed a lot in the effect of the moon, always. I remember my father would only cut his hair at certain periods of the moon. That's how much he would believe on the moon. I'm not as extreme. But as I said, we never start doing the blend before the first full moon of February. We think the wine becomes wine after the first full moon of February. We always start bottling after the moon going down. And to be honest, I think the wine changes in the bottle depending on the moon. I'm not saying this as like, I'm not, I'm an engineer with, I'm very scientific, and I think it's scientific, the effect of the moon on the wine making process. The way we work with the plants, this is something that actually I must say have changed, because you look at the vines and you can clearly see how they were being pruned at the beginning, and you're like, it felt like a butcher went there. And now, 30 years down the line, we're working with people which are really helping us work with these plants and thinking about these plants, which now are 35 years old. But what are we going to do for the next 35 years? How are we going to maintain them for 35 more years? And so really being so careful about the pruning process, having only our team 100% trained to doing the pruning process, even bringing in some AI and vision techniques to understand where's the best way to pruning. Again, like I am a technology lover, so I want to bring a lot more technology into the winemaking process. Technology doesn't necessarily mean bad. Technology, I think, is innovation. It's the reason why wines are getting better every year. It's not because of the climate, but it's because humans are becoming smarter and better at working with their wines. And this typically comes with better technology. So, and so I'm all for bringing more technology into the vineyards, investing in a lot of data collection, trying to understand how different microclimate in the different vineyards affect the parcels. And so I haven't really answered your question. Why are we not biodynamic? The answer is, I guess we don't care about the label, and we are not so strict with the rules that we would even be able to manage to be that. So we want to do what we like to do in the vineyards, what we think is best for the vineyards.
Do you think it moved you also in this technologically advanced direction that your father was more intuitive and you kind of wanted to understand why things work and you wanted to improve on things more deliberately?
I mean, I can give you a perfect example of what you said. So the way my father would plant would be based on intuition. Mm-hmm. Like he would go, imagine you're in Valdorcia, you're not on the Etna or on Chianti or whatnot, where pretty much everywhere there are vines. Where we are, there's nothing for hectares and hectares. Our property is 250 hectares about, and we have only 25 hectares planted. And it's small parcels spread here and there, and he would see the soil and be like, this is good, let's plant here. And I would say 80% of the time he was right, but 20% of the time it was a very expensive mistake. After because you see the result after 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden the vines are dying. There's too much salt underneath, and so you see some plots which have been abandoned, some plots have been completely eradicated, and my approach was objectively more systematic. I went and did a map of all the soil inside our property, digged it down, and now I have a perfect map of all the soil in our property. But we've just planted 3 more hectares in a place where we found the soil to be amazing, and at higher altitude, we're at 700 meters. Yeah, I guess this is an example of this.
With which variety did you plant this?
So, mostly Merlot.
Because it's high altitude, and do you think it stays cool?
Exactly. For that reason primarily. Like, we still really think that there's high potential to keep on making very high quality, fresh Merlot where we are. And this higher altitude, I think, can be really good for Merlot.
Mm-hmm. Is there any wine other than Castello di Ama that you like to drink? Or kind of wine style?
Yes, I mean, I'm a big, I like wine in general very much. I find myself drinking often Nebbiolo, especially Barbaresco, I would say even more than Barolo. These are wines that I definitely enjoy a lot. But another wine which I think is great, and I think I'm very glad that it's having a bit of a comeback, is Chianti, which you just mentioned. I just think it's such high quality especially for the price, really, to be honest. So these are wines which I really enjoy to drink a lot.
Maybe one last question. What do you want your legacy to be in the wine world?
I must say I really don't care that much about it. In my opinion, if, as I said before, if this estates will become... something that for my father was very important was that these vineyards, these estates, he was a very strong character, especially in the wine world. And I guess the worry at the beginning was that people would associate too much the man to the estates. Andrea Franchetti was in front of Tenuta di Trinoro, in front of Passo Pisciaro. And I think this is actually something he absolutely did not care about. So much that he never used the family name. He used it only with Franchetti, the Passo Pisciaro wine. But that's just because it's such a unique project that it made sense. But in general, he never used the family name. He always wanted the estates to speak for themselves. And I would say that there was definitely a worry that would not be the case. And it's probably still too early to tell. But I am happy that I haven't seen that happening too much. I think that these estates are, there are still estates created from zero by one generation ago, but are more and more estates which are, recognized for themselves. So my legacy, I hope, is to essentially make this official. Go from make these wines become really a part of the center of the Italian winemaking, and officialize, yes, the strength of these two estates to be pillars within their own regions of winemaking.
I wish you succeed.
Thank you.
Cool. And thanks very much for this conversation.
You haven't told me what you think about any of the wines. You can choose one.
Well, I already talked about the Chardonnay, and I like that very much. To be honest, I haven't tried any Tenuta di Trinoro. We have La Cupola on our wine list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to send you a bottle then.
Yeah, please, please. I have to sell them anyway, so this is actually my last day in my sommelier career. So I'm headed to the hotel now in an hour, and then I'm gonna
Okay.
work for Dollerer, in Austria.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to try all your wines, maybe also different vintages, because I haven't had the opportunity to even compare different vintages.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and to be honest, Franchetti was the first time I tried it was in Sicily, and I love Petit Verdot. So there is one crazy guy in Burgenland who makes a single variety Petit Verdot. To be honest, I was not really blown away, and it's not like this orgasm in a mouth kind of feeling, but it was such a unique wine. I don't think I tasted anything similar before.
Yeah.
And that stayed in my memory very clearly, to be honest. This kind of blackish wine, which you expect something else before you drink it, and even from the smell, this is why we drink wine. But also, but also the four Contradas what we tried. We haven't tried it in terms of altitude, but also in terms of structure. Yeah, but I think it's kind of related. I don't remember the exact.
Yeah, somewhat related.
Yes.
There's definitely a correlation, yes.
Yes, but it was also... I would try to drink more vintages and maybe compare them more, and maybe then a more clear character would come out of the Contradas as well, not only because of this specific vintage. And I would really love to try the single variety Cabernet Franc, because I think this is...
I think you will enjoy that for sure.
Yeah. Super. Thank you very much. Cool.
All right.
Have a nice day. Thank you very much. Ciao.